This is the Sim Pit. I'm your host, Sean Cole, and with me, as usual, for 3 Wide, are Amir Assad and Devin Booth.
Hey.
How you guys doing on this beautiful Saturday morning?
Great, man. Tired, but I'm good. I'm ready. It's been a while since we've done this, man.
Yeah, you've been doing a lot. You've been moving around. How about you, Devin? How you doing?
Fantastic, man. Absolutely wonderful.
You've been out in the woods for a week.
Yeah, I have fresh air, no sim racing, which is weird, but it was much needed. Good reset. Well, I'm glad to be back.
Not even blue light.
Yeah.
I mean, you didn't even have computer monitor. It wasn't just not sim racing. It was like no blue light.
Yeah, I tent and cook on the fire. We were bushing it. It was nice.
So it is Saturday. It is not the second Saturday because we did have to postpone this show because of the 24-hour of Spa race. But we are here in our fill-in position. Next month it'll be the second Saturday. But welcome to 3 Wide. This is our, it's a podcast style, but we're on camera. This podcast barely even exists anymore. Everything I see nowadays called a podcast is a video podcast.
Yep.
But I think podcast initially meant audio. Anyway, we are here with audio, video, and we're just here to kind of talk about some topics of discussion, things that over the last month have been big news stories, big Reddit debates, big forum battles, big the kind of things that people really have some strong opinions on. So we have a couple topics today. We're going to keep the show to about an hour. So, Amir, in our title, we write a couple of things. We have a couple topics today. Project Cars 3. And we have a twist on that. And the other being sim coaching. So, in our description, we literally wrote Project Cars 3 and the evolution of sim racing. Now, that's kind of a statement. I know this is a thought that is strong with you, Amir, Project Cars 3, but what do you mean by Project Cars 3 and the evolution of sim racing?
For me, I was looking at Project Cars. So I mean, we started hearing news about it a month and a half ago. We're back in June is when the first trailer dropped, and that's when Ian Bell started tweeting and talking about what Project Cars 3 is going to be and how it's moved on from 1 and 2. So it got mixed reviews about what they're trying to do with it. And for me, I kind of think of it is Project Cars 3 a move backwards from sim racing and what they started doing, and now with them moving forward into Project Cars 3.
And what do you have any initial thoughts on that?
So, yeah, very opinionated on it. I mean, for me, because I was a huge supporter of Project Cars 1. I mean, because when the guys from Slightly Mats came out and said Project Cars, and CAR stands for Community Assisted Racing Simulation, and started reading about it, and hey, they're actually looking at the people who are going to buy this game and play this game. They wanted their feedback on it and how to make it the most accurate sim that they could at the time. And you could donate money, you got different tiers, and you got access to the game in alpha, beta, and you just helped out the developers along with real race car drivers to develop the game. And they kind of did that with 2, but now with 3, since they got bought out by Codemasters, it feels like they threw all that out the window, and now they're making it more into a Codemasters game, and it's no longer a Slightly Mad Studios game.
Now, let me interrupt you there, just to be fair. Now, I mean, they have made some pretty bold statements that Project Cars 3 development team was still their own studio, branch, whatever, and under the family of Codemasters, not so much that they're going to be directly influenced. Do you think that there's we don't know if the direction they were taking was the guidance of the Project Cars 3 team, so to speak, and Ian Bell, or was it the influence of the purchase and acquisition by Codemasters? I mean, definitively, we don't know, but are you kind of saying that you think that this was a Codemasters turn for the title?
It's hard to say because Codemasters bought them out recently too, so it hasn't been that long since they announced that, and then they announced Project Cars 3. So I don't know. I'm pretty sure they started developing Project Cars 3. I mean, especially when they announced that hey, we're going to come out with our own console. That was last year. And Project Cars 3 is going to be running exclusively on that. Then that kind of disappeared and went away. And I think, yeah, like what Billy's saying too. And I think one of the things they want to do is get rid of the stuff that people weren't using, I guess. But I think it's twofold. So one, I think with 1 and 2 they tried to break into the hardcore sim market by saying hey, this is one of the best sims that's out there, and I don't think they reached it that far with all the other offerings that are out there, like with iRacing, Assetto Corsa, and Automobilista and R Factor 2. I think now they're trying to go more of the approach of Gran Turismo and Forza, where hey, we can cast a wider net and grab a way bigger audience by going that way, by establishing hey, a more dedicated career mode, a more dedicated multiplayer mode, instead of trying to tout the lane of being like a hardcore sim racer, and push those people that are probably scared to jump into that arena just yet, and and be able to just jump directly into what Project Cars 3 is going to be.
Devin, do you think Codemasters had an effect on the outcome of what Project Cars? I mean, this is just speculation. We don't know. We all have our own opinions and takes. Do you think they had an effect?
I'm not sure if it's so much Codemasters. I think I'm more on the train with like kind of what Billy said with they looked at the data and then they cut it. But one really good point that Amir brings up is the Forza GT correlation. I think that there's some merit there. I think they something along the lines of what Billy said. They looked at the data, they saw what people were using, they decided to cut the things that weren't be using, and then thereby creating the PC version of Forza and GT. Because PC, GT is PlayStation exclusive, and while Forza is available on PC, the triple screen support isn't there. The optimization oftentimes isn't there. There's often little issues that arise. The force feedback isn't there. That kind of stuff. So if Project Cars 2 can fill that easier to gain market with plenty of cars, plenty of tracks, and then kind of dull down the sim side of things, I do think that's where they're leaning. But I think they missed the mark, right? You hear the way Amir's talking about it. I'm very much so on the same page. PC One, when they first started talking about it, was going to be a simulator created by the community for the community, and they failed that.
So now I actually agree with you guys completely, to the point that I'd say that I don't actually think Codemasters had a huge effect or influence. And here's my logic on that. They already had Grid. Because in a lot of ways, to me, Project Cars 3 is sort of a more in that direction than, or very much in that direction. Codemasters is already sitting on a franchise or a title giving you that market. I think that Project Cars was going after that market. Codemasters wanted them, I don't know. Is it a monopoly play? Is it an assets play? Is it a licensing play? Is it the crew? I mean, hey, you could argue the Project Cars development crew makes a better sim than Codemasters. So, if I were to put, Project Cars 2, I think is a great sim. And can rival anything that Codemasters has made in that level.
There's a couple.
That's right.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, for me, like I said, no, I think you're right, Sean. Because I mean, you look at the engine. I don't want to say like the development team. I want to say more of we know that the engine that Project Cars uses is capable of doing that. We've seen that with Automobilista too. Because a lot of people were kind of angry about why they went away from the R Factor engine to now the Project Cars engine. There was a lot of hate in the community about that. But then when the AMS2 came out, and then when they went full release, I mean, everything just worked. The cars felt great, force feedback was great, but you had to play. I mean, the triple screen support was good, better than what Project Cars could offer. I think that's probably why what Codemasters probably went after, slightly mad, and they might just drop Grid completely and just use Project Cars now as their GT sim alongside Formula One and Dirt. So I mean, I think so we know that the engine is capable of doing a lot of good things. It just now, can the developers bring that kind of level, like kind of what Automobilista 2 developers brought to the table?
So you kind of touch on a couple things when you both of you guys actually, when you're talking about kind of like Codemasters versus SMS, there's kind of like an unspoken thing here where if we're talking about the perspective from Codemasters, I think we're all on the same page. Codemasters, they're trying to get something better. They're trying to get more sim. Like, from that perspective, it seems like a good move. Seems like a good thing. When we're talking about the SMS side of things, still all in agreement, but we're on the other side of the table, right? SMS screwed up. They were supposed to be the simulator. They were supposed to make this purest community-driven sim, and they did not deliver on that. So depending on how you look at the argument and how you phrase your statement, like there's no real wrong answer here. Even though, we're talking opinion based, so it's never a wrong answer.
Yeah.
But just when we're talking about it as a general agreement, general consensus on the community, and you hear all the controversy behind this, it's a good thing, I think, to point out what you guys both just kind of touched on a little bit there, that depending on which side you're looking at it from, we're all very valid in our either complaints or endorsement of the title. Because again, to reiterate, Codemasters, from their end, for them to go more simulator after having done something like their Dirt Rally 2 franchise, and Dirt Rally, that's a great simulator, right? So to see them doing more road-based actual simulation is wonderful. And then, from the SMS side, to see them going more kind of Codemaster arcade sim or simcade, if you will, is kind of like, that's kind of makes us feel like left out, I guess would be a way to put it. Like we expected something and they didn't deliver.
So if this was my sim arcade simcade meter right here, Project Cars 2 almost was the defining line for me. And like they were this side of sim from simcade, and I would say that looking at most Codemasters title, that they were this side of simcade. And I feel like Project Cars has made the move to the other side of that meter, and I feel like to an extent, and this is all speculation, you guys.
Yep.
We don't know anything, right? But I feel like they've taken a step towards simcade, and that we, the sim purists, if I want to, I, the sim purist, no, I'm not. You know what? I'm no sim purist. I completely take that back. But I feel like the sim racing world is losing one that was on the side of sim to the dark side. No, I don't mean that either. But to the simcade side, and I'm pretty confident in that statement. But I don't think that that's bad. I'm going to take us a little off track and then come back to your guys' thoughts on this.
Yeah.
The other day on the show, I was talking about Gran Turismo 7 and the importance of that game. And I will buy it and I will play it. But let's be honest, I'm not going to play it a ton because I'll be back and doing iRacing or Assetto Corsa or R Factor. But I will play it. But it's still, despite the fact that it won't get the hours of gameplay to back up what I say about the game, which is it is the most important title there is. Well, that's because I really want motorsport games to bring people in, and I think that you can do that through entertainment, fun factor, explosions, flashy things, neon lights. I think the Forza Horizon vibe, music, music. iRacing doesn't know what music is, right? There's not a single note of music in all of iRacing, I don't think.
You do get fireworks, though, and airplanes.
Do they? Is there a Star Spangled Banner or anything before the race? If you listen carefully,
Not even.
No, but
so
you get birds. There's flocks of birds.
right? I mean, they do fireworks at the end of Daytona when you finish an endurance race. They do flyovers in Le Mans, so.
But no music. So I think it's okay. Getting back to the statement on the data would really help define like the disciplines people raced, the length of race that people raced, the type of content that they used the most. But I don't know if it definitively can tell us where on the sim arcade sim scale it falls and where those changes go. But I would argue that the more arcade I go, the more copies I'm going to sell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because you got to think about it. I mean, when you look at, if we're going to talk exclusively sim racing, and we're talking about iRacing, R Factor, AMS. I mean, we're a very niche community. We're a very small community. We're not that big. I mean, the Gran Turismo sport, not Gran Turismo sport, the Gran Turismo community is, it easily dwarfs, is way bigger than the size of what the normal hardcore sim community is. So, and that's what I don't hate on those, because like you mentioned it earlier, like most people don't start off in iRacing. They don't start off in R Factor. They start off with Need for Speed, Forza, Gran Turismo, and then they start wanting something more, and then they find out about all these hardcore sims and they get more into it. And that's what I think. Like that's what I think what Project Cars now is trying to do, is trying to cast that wider net of people. And maybe maybe later on there is going to be, they go back to their roots. I mean, because our F1's talking about having a casual game and a simulator game that go hand in hand with each other. So I don't know if that's something along the lines of what Codemasters might do in the future, where, hey, here's our entry game, but if you want something more hardcore, we're going to be releasing this later on. I don't know. So we'll see what happens. Yeah, we'll see what happens in the future, man.
All right, I want to. So Billy says this, and it takes me exactly the direction I want to pose my next question, you guys. But what defines a sim? That definition is so loose for everybody. Agreed. Yeah. The other day we were talking about iRacing as a comparison, and I was saying what a nightmare iRacing is on an engineering standpoint. Like, I don't sim race. My standards of I don't sim race to feel the need to become a race engineer in order to have a fighting chance in some cars and track combinations. That's not why I want to sim race. So is detailed, realistic setup changes and the knowledge for an engineering degree a definition of a sim? I mean, like, if we were going to start playing that game of loosely worded, well, I don't want being an engineer being included in my list of needs for simulation. I played NASCAR Heat 5 and I moved the little slider. Loose or tight? That's all I needed to do. Loose or tight, go run. And you know what? I liked that. And that's coming from me, who, again, I at times could be accused of being a sim purist. But some would define it that way, and others would say, forget it, take that out. What about, all right, other rumors or facts? What about pit stops? Pit stopping, the art of getting into the pits. We race. Pit stops affect positions. A pit stop, you can make up 10 seconds on your opponent being good at pits. But in Project Cars 3, I believe I've heard no pit stops.
Yep. So, yeah, that was one of the things that really turned me off to it. Was they were saying we want this to be a sim experience, and this is I'm just paraphrasing what Ian Bell said. I was like, this is going to be a great sim experience. And a push forward, but yet they're taking away tire wear, they're taking away fuel, they're taking away pit stops, because we just want people to focus on the driving aspect of games. Well, I mean, in a way, I get that. Not doing all that stuff is not everybody's. People just want to go out and race. Like, we got people in the sim pit where they just want to hop into a 15-minute race, do their thing, and then they're done. They don't want to put practice in. They don't want to do any of that stuff to get better. Which, that probably is going to be a sim for them. I mean, like, for me, though, on a personal level, like, I enjoy the strategy. I enjoy the pit stops to refuel. Like, how much fuel do I need for this race? How, do I change tires? Do I keep my tires? I mean, if for the guys that are part of our endurance team, I mean, we talk for days about strategy. We do a lot of practice, nailing down our stints. Like, all right, how many stints are we going to do for our 24-hour races or 12-hour races? How much fuel are we going to put in? Are we going to double stint tires? When are we going to double stint? Based off the time of day. And then for Project Cars 3, kind of got rid of that. And for me, like, I would say flat out, like, I'm not going to buy. I'm not even going to play, because they just took out everything that I enjoy in sim racing. So now there's not a point for me to be even bother with it anymore.
My standing. Go ahead, Devin. Sorry.
Well, there's a couple things here before we get too far that chat's brought up while we were talking. And the first one correlates directly into what Amir was saying, so it doesn't bring up now. But with the thing, like, they're taking away from what Amir is looking for in a sim, and I'm fully in agreement with that. They're taking away what I actually like in a sim. But Kilatofu makes a good comment that kind of goes with kind of what Billy says, right? Billy, as like you say, you argue for more options, not less, but you also say that the data shows that the hardly anyone in Project Cars 2 used pit stops, right? The average race being 20 minutes. Kilatofu also mentioning that the taking away options from players is a negative, right? There's no reason to take those options out. You can have those options in and just make their easy game mode, right? Or call it the normal game mode. And the normal game mode is 20-minute races, maybe half hour, hour at most, so that you don't have to pit stop, right? Tire wear on like a lower usage, so you don't have to change tires, right? So they could have done that while still providing a sim or a hard expert whatever option, and then you wouldn't have nearly as much controversy as we're talking about now. And then just a couple other things from chat here. So we had Sonic Worm mentioning like a sim racing FIA. And we're talking about these changes and these things and taking options away. And I don't think that realistically a sim racing FIA is something that could actually work out. But when you say it, like, it kind of seems like if we had something like that, some kind of standard, like even if it wasn't a governing body, but like a standard of some kind to adhere to,
there was a push. There was a push for that. If you remember, I talked to Michi Hoyer and Ali Pakala, and they were pushing. This is right before some of the big esport explosions that happened. But it was too little too late, and then the organizing bodies were there, and now it's like under the control of FIA already. If sim racing is going to have a path in European racing, FIA is already there to say, no, we'll govern you, even though we know nothing about what you do. Getting back to setups, pit stops, things that you need or don't need in a sim. We could go on all day long about the options of things that are on the needs list versus the want list. I mean, because in some cases, we could be talking about proper triple screen support. In some cases, we could be talking about proper controller support. In some cases, we could be talking about VR. And these are the things that are coming from the PC side, because a lot of these games are now multi-platform. These are also the big pushes that are coming from the sim purists when these guys are going in the direction of the masses, which is not triple screens, not fancy steering wheels, and not even VR in some cases. So needs versus want. The other thing I'm going to say on that is, how many of these things, like Billy said, and it even made me think, we do a long GT race, and it's like, would we be better served by having two 20-minute races instead of a 40-minute race for the fun factor? Because everyone can take a quick breather, get back in. You don't have to think about pit stops. You don't have to think about all the extra BS. You just run. And then if you have a bad run, you're already coming back and doing it again. That's gaming mentality. Gaming mentality isn't, to them, 45 minutes is an endurance race, I think. So if you're appealing to the masses do not want to sit there sweating for an hour. And then the other thing that I bring up whenever I just remember, Codemasters F1 2010 and 11, I believe, had no pace car. And it was 12 or 13 that they introduced the pace car, because the public was like, oh my God, where's the pace car? And then as soon as you did your first race with the pace car in Formula One, you were like, this game is a total waste of time. Like, this is an authenticity level that I don't need. Yep. I dare say the same thing, and I think a lot of people don't have the car craft to be good rain racers. So I think rain is another one of those that, yes, we all want it. Yes, it would make things more perfect in certain circumstances of racing. But then when you get it, is anyone even... How many of the people are really using it? 5%? 10%? And then if you are going to develop a game, and I dare say this, let's face it, if you can make a cross-platform game, you're going to retire a lot wealthier than if you make a PC-only game. And the more you can trim the fat, the better your chances of making a decent console game, given the limited resources compared to the PC. So, with that said, I don't blame... I think what they're doing is probably in the best interest of their retirement, To put it bluntly,
Yeah.
it's kind of a rare thing where you get these sim companies that purist mentality is the motivating force.
I think that's what is bothering, the vocal and the negativity, where that negativity was coming from a lot of people is because of how Slightly Mad started, and how they started as not starting as a company, but when they broke away from Need for Speed and started developing Project Cars, they were going the direction of, we want to be hardcore sim racers, and now they've completely abandoned that thought and they've moved on into a different direction. And so, and I think, like, if they changed the name of it, like, didn't say it's Project Cars, now it's something else, I don't think there have been that many people that you would hear all this negativity, but because of the name associated with how this title started, you're seeing a lot of that negativity out there, on the interweb.
You can't change direction under a title without just upsetting the heck out of your community, it seems.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, because it'd be like iRacing. Well, iRacing says, hey, we're not doing sim rate. We're not going to be doing sims anymore. We're going to move to, a GT style. I mean, what would happen to iRacing if they did that?
So there's actually a really good correlation or comparison there in the Dirt Rally franchise again. If you look at the Dirt franchise, you had Dirt 1, 2, 3, and then they came out with Dirt Rally, which, yes, is a separate game now, but as seen by everybody when it came out, it was kind of like that was Dirt 4, right? And that was nothing like what the Dirt community really wanted. A whole bunch of us got into it because we wanted the sim, but it wasn't what the Dirt community wanted. So there was this same kind of controversy, but on the other side of things with that title. So we've seen this happen before. One other thing, when you're talking about the Sims, and both of you guys mentioned as well, the ability to maybe dull things down without taking them away. And like Sean, you were talking about the setup stuff. We had somebody in chat, Nate Dog, earlier mention AC and ACC as a comparative. ACC, I think, would be a great example of a title that did it right. You can use the aggressive setup, you can use the wet setup, you can use the tight setup, right? Or the whatever. They have the 3 different baselines.
Well, it's not even that, but you can also adjust how you want to do the start procedures of the car. If you wanted easy mode, the car starts for you. You could do the medium setting where all you got to do is press ignition, but then if you do like the full hardcore, you got to do starter, ignition, you got to do this whole startup procedure to get the car going. And then if you spin the car stalls, and you have to go through that all over again. So yeah, you're right. Like, ACC did it just right for the skill level people want. Not skill level, I would say, but for the level of realism that people want in a title.
So
yeah, that's exactly right.
After the release of Project Cars 3, does Codemasters still need the Slightly Mad team? And will there be a next version of a Grid? One of the luxuries of having all these different types of games, by the way, is it means that they can go after different markets and not have to upset their crowd by going too far in a different direction. Yep. Codemasters can kind of leave it on Slightly Mad. Like, hey, this is what they're working on. We didn't touch it. We had a hands-off approach on this one for this one. And still have that luxury of making things that go after certain markets. Again, I don't expect they're ever, going to change what they're doing with Formula One. Right? I don't predict a Formula One 2021 with a bunch of neon and spaceships and not even a Forza Horizon vibe. They are going to stay true to the title.
Yep. And
it's built into the recipe. But with the broad spectrum of names they have, look what they've done with Dirt. They've done a really good job with Dirt, and even segregating that into the ability to have a much more sim-rooted rally version. And let's face it, Dirt 5 is looking super-duper arcadey, right? But in a really fun way. Again, I love Dirt 2. I love Dirt 1, Dirt 2 I thought were really, really awesome because they were fun factor-based games. I can't wait to Gymkhana if they did what they did with the first Gymkhana, I can't wait to Gymkhana in Dirt 5. It was just fun. It was just fun taking that little snorting,
Yeah.
was it a Fiesta or the Focus? I don't remember, but it was a snorting little giant go-kart or little micro car, and it was really fun taking off little mini ramps and knocking over cones and whatnot. And I could do it all day long, and much like pit stops, in like 3, 4, 5 minute bursts. It didn't turn into the 1 hour race.
Yeah.
All right. Any other thoughts on Project Cars 3? I let me rephrase this one thing to be really clear. And I think you guys will agree with me. The Sim Pit, we represent a wide variety of driver. Our audience is very broad. And the other thing is the Sim Pit has always been for the betterment of sim racing across the board. And one of those is inclusion, making it open for everybody. And I think that Project Cars has a really good name in the gaming market, not just in the sim racing market. Like, they were a, top selling, not top, but one on the top 10 list the month they came out based on their name. It's just one of those titles that kids were buying, moms were buying for their kids. It wasn't just a sim racing title. And I think that they've gone the direction, I think, again, Forza Horizon 4. Yeah, Horizon was a big change coming from Forza Motorsport. And I'm sure the Forza purists lost their minds at, I can just imagine the wording that some of the Forza purists would have used when Horizon came out. And yet, Horizon's a really successful game that has its redeeming qualities if you look at it for what it is, and it has broadened the sim racing market, because some kids come in and they're like, oh, I love the this and that car, and then they see it in another sim, and maybe it's only because they turned into a big fan of one car, that all of a sudden they're jumping ship to a different sim and eventually moving up that ladder. I guess my only concern, especially in this commercialized world we live in, and this is the wording that we chose on purpose for the title of the topic, Project Cars 3 and the evolution of sim racing. Is there any chance we're going to see a dumbing down of sim racing in the name of the almighty dollar, and that at some point there'll be no room even for a purist sim, or it'll be so small, underground, cult following that it won't have the same thing that we have going on with this massive appeal of hardware and software right now?
I don't think so, to be honest. Like, you'll see it in certain markets, just like we are with PC, but it's no different than any other thing. Like, certain franchises will do it, certain franchises will get better. But we're getting halfway, so I'm going to kind of try to segue us here. But we talking about this basically comes down to, like a lot of people in chat here have said, like, what is a sim, right? When you boil it all down, where all this argument comes from us all being like, this is my sim, right? Joe just mentioned the toes and the resets, right? We've got people talking about damage. We got people talking about all the different variations, the tunes we've mentioned, right? The physics themselves, the options with rain, right? All of these things, it's very subjective, right? So this is why, like, you'll hear, I know, Ashanya, you'll use it. I use it myself. The term simcade, right? That term, I think, I think they're all simcades in reality. Right, all of the games we play for some level of enjoyment. When we looked, we had one of our commenters here put in, this is Double Clutch Productions, simulator, the definition, paraphrasing. A machine with a similar set of controls designed to provide realistic imitation of the operation of a vehicle, aircraft, or other complex system used for, and in capitals, training purposes, which is very accurate to simulation as a, that is the term, right? You're trying to give it like 100%, this is what it means. And that, while it is technically correct, doesn't really factor into simulation as a game, right? We're playing games, we're enjoying ourselves. Some people will use it for training purposes, but we as a whole are not generally using it for training purposes. We're using it for fun. So really, as much as we want to separate arcade, simulator, yada yada, they're all simcades at some level. nothing is going to be perfect. And we all just kind of like, we're going to be very subjective. We're going to have these conversations, and they're great conversations. They're a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And we all kind of have like, we all learn and shit, which is awesome. But at the same time, when it boils down to it, everybody's going to have their own take on it, and that's just kind of how it's going to be. So thank you guys for coming to chat with us.
I would dare say by that. Go ahead, Amir.
Oh no, I was saying no, and Devin, you're right. Like whoever you talk to, no one's going to give you an exact definition of what a true sim is. Each person, you sit there, hey, identify a sim to what's a true sim is. Everyone's going to give you a different answer, whether it's iRacing, R Factor, Assetto Corsa, Automobilista. It's generally now what game do you enjoy playing more, and you say you're going to hold your standard, hold every other game to that standard that you enjoy doing. And going back, like, I know, like, I talking a little bit negatively about Project Cars and SMS, but in reality, this game's going to sell. It's going to sell, no issues. I mean, we can discuss that all we want. They joined up with Codemasters. Codemasters, for the titles that they provide, they know how to provide. They know how to get that right mix of fun and simulation. It's not one way. It's not leaning more towards the other. It's just kind of right there in that middle line where it provides you that fun and enjoyment and not being a true sim. And with Codemasters too, I mean, now they got the ability of releasing these titles, going to consoles too. So I mean, not like with iRacing or R Factor or Automobilista, you're never going to see those titles on consoles. But again, like most sim racers, when we started off on consoles, and then we moved to PC. So I mean, for everything I've said badly about it, I think it's a good thing in the end, because eventually, that will bring more sim racers into the sims that we actually, us three here, we enjoy doing a lot more than what they're coming out with.
All right, here's my take. Every sim we've named, every sim we're talking about, ready for this? They all suck. They all suck bad. No. Let me go a little further with this. I also think that NASA, they don't use it anymore, but the NASA Space Shuttle Simulator sucked. I think McLaren's Formula One, whatever their best simulator they've got, sucks. And here's the bottom line. Because reality is based on gravity. And without gravity, I don't care what kind of motion, I don't care what kind of vision, I don't care what you've done. Without gravity, you're not driving a car. Without gravity, you're not flying a plane. Without gravity, you're not flying a space shuttle until you get out of outer space. Our simulators might actually truly mimic flying a space shuttle in outer space because there's no gravity. But I just, so it's sort of a funny argument when we start talking sim, because man, even in its purest, most billion-dollar version, it still sucks. That's why my latest take on sim racing, I mean, for 20 years, I probably defended sim racing. The moon doesn't exist. And now I kind of just so much more accepting that it's a mimic, more of a mimic than simulation. And I'm not trying to take away from, and I do believe there is a simcade sim hierarchy, and that, but yeah, it's like, I don't know, the word simulation is a really tough word to back up.
Yeah.
The only simulator I can really think of is, like, if you saw The Jerk, he drove the little miniature train, but it was like a real steam engine train that the kids sat on top of, and it really went on tracks. I think that's truly a simulation if it operates like a real big train. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess the other one that I started to really think about is like RC cars. Is that more of a sim? And this is a whole different topic for another day, another time. But when I sit here talking about gravity and the importance of it for truly being a sim, well, at least in an RC car, you are simulating gravity and real world forces. And whether now you can start arguing whether the cars and tracks are realistically to scale, but the physics can't be argued. The physics are more physics than engineers can mathematically calculate, right? They're real. So, yeah. Anyway, I am optimistic for Project Cars 3. I think it is going to do very well. I think for the sake of money and for the sake of sim racing, I think you take the name, the branding, the licensing, everything within Project Cars, you give it a little bit of that Codemasters marketing dollars and marketing machine, and this could be a really, really big title that could rival some things that didn't expect to see it as their competition. And then on the backside, I hope, I was so pleasantly surprised when I fired up F1 2020 and it recognized all my controls. 3 control units, everything mapped, everything worked, and within minutes I was driving F1 2020. And I could add a lot of things to my wish list for the game, sure, but that was like the first step basics that I just hope for any of these newer titles as they some do migrate that direction. All right, any other thoughts? I'm all tapped out on PC3.
No, I think you close it off well. It's optimistic for it as like a saleable title, and we'll see where it goes and where it fits as far as simcade, however you want to argue the subjectivity of it. But I think that's a good way to close it out.
All right, so our next topic, and this is something I talked about the other day on the show. Actually, last week maybe. Sim coaching. Kind of interesting thing. We're playing games. Sim coaching. Does it cost too much? And is it worth it? Who came up with this one?
I think it was kind of a combination. You were talking about it, and we kind of started talking about it a little bit in Discord there. But we know lots of people. Like we know Mitchie, right? We all watch Driver 61. He's got his coaching up.
I've been hired. I have coached a few handfuls of people and charged money for it.
Well, yeah, and then there's those of us, like, you've done guides, I've done guides. That's not necessarily coaching, but like YouTube guides is a form of coaching. That's visual coaching, right? And those are you start talking about all the different variations of coaching, the fact that you have, right, and the fact that like many of us have done tutorials of some kind or another. When you're talking about that, like, what should the cost be? Should it be free? Should it be ad supported? Should people be paying? Like, I think you were saying it's $100 for the Driver 61 course. People charge varying from like 40 to 60 for like hour-long sessions.
I'll be forthcoming, and I'm not. This is not an advertising. I actually don't really want to be doing coaching, so don't send me emails on this. But I have, and I'm going to be honest. And I don't know how. I charged $50 for the first hour and $35 every hour after that. So that way, if they only used one, they're going to pay me for just showing up a little bit. That extra $15. And I thought that was unreasonable when I charged it. But I wouldn't have done it for less, so that's how I came up with that money. Like, my time wasn't going to be worth less than that. And, in terms of shutting everything down to take the time, because it's not like it's literally like, okay, it's 10 o'clock, start coaching. Oh, 11 o'clock, we're done. It was going to take a lot more than that. In every case of coaching, there are 2 parts to it. I do feel that I was able to find that person performance, not always speed, but performance in that 1 hour session where there was a noticeable difference from coming in to leaving the session. And at the same time, I always told them there was a limit to how much I can even do for them. Yep. I can teach you some basics of racing, and then as you get better, I can probably help you critique yourself a little bit. And then the other thing I'm going to say before I turn it over to you guys, well, no, I'm going to finish with this. So, Amir, have you ever paid for coaching?
Yeah. So I had Mitchie coach me one session, I believe it was last year. Yeah, so it was last year, and just never had a chance to do it again. Yeah. But for me, I can't remember what. I think it was like $40 for 1 hour, and we ended up going like an hour and a half, and we actually ended up streaming it on the Simpit too. I don't know if the video is still up too. still trying to do advertising for YouTube showing the sim pit, so that video might still be on there. But no, I found it because I was running in an R Factor 2 league, and I wasn't finding the speed that I was trying to do. I wasn't being as consistent as I wanted. So I hit up Mitchie. I mean, because he's he's a great sim racer on R Factor 2. So we spent an hour and a half, and he was teaching me, coaching me through the corners. Here's what you got to do. Here's what you got to take. And my time, I mean, I got more and more consistent. I think by the end of that session, I was a second and a half, 2 seconds quicker from where I started off as a baseline. Because we even built the setup along the way too. So when I find things that I didn't like what the car was doing, we'd stop, do some changes, go back out on track again. And yeah, by the end of it, by the end of it, it was like about a second and a half quicker. And at the end of it, he gave me a full report on the things that I was doing, things that I need to improve, some tips and tricks for the track that we were running on, because I think we were running Sebring. And because at first I kind of didn't, I just did it just for the jollies, because I just want to try it out and see. But I actually ended up enjoying it, because when I did my race for that league for that weekend, I ended up placing in the top 5, and in the league I was running, it was a very competitive league too. So I was really happy with myself with this, with the speed that I found and consistency I found.
Right. So for $40, you got an hour and a half of instruction from one of the best R Factor drivers on earth, not some hack like Sean Cole, and you got a report afterwards.
Yep.
So I'd say to me, it sounds like you got your money's worth. All right, I want to come back to you and your coaching and what you got. Devin, have you ever paid for coaching?
No.
Have you ever paid for coaching in something other than sim racing?
I have never paid for coaching in anything.
Are you good at anything? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
We saw what happened at Spa, right?
Okay. I just want to make a couple comments before I come back to you guys, and this is for the audience out there. Tiger Woods still pays for coaching. And I guarantee you the guy who coaches him cannot even play on the same course at the same time with Tiger Woods. There's no comparing their abilities. Aaron Rodgers still pays for coaching or gets coached by a guy who cannot throw the ball half as far. I would dare say that a good percentage of Formula One drivers, although they might not tell us about it because it might wreck our thoughts and images of these drivers, have coaches. Doesn't that mean by nature, if you want to win or be better, you do the same thing in sim racing? I mean, I don't think you can get a football coach for $40 an hour, by the way. I don't think
No, and I think you kind of alluded it too. So I mean, yeah, all these athletes have coaches, and they're probably not as good as the athlete themselves. But I mean, what coaches essentially, I think they do is they bring out their job is to make you consistent and bring out the best in you, no matter what your abilities are, regardless of what the abilities of the coach are. I mean, in the end of the day, you might be slower than him, or you might end up being better than him. So that's one thing I kind of want to bring up that little point too, is like some people just don't have the abilities to be fast. Just who they are. Like they're never going to be as fast as Max Benecke or Max Verstappen in Sims. But what coaches can help you do a lot more is be more consistent on a track and look out for things that you wouldn't notice on your own on a track. And in the end, you'll gain maybe a second or two, but you're probably not going to be as fast as what some people think they should be as fast as.
Right. Devin?
So I don't know. I got a lot about this one. In terms of like it being worth it and like that kind of thing, like I'm 100% yes, it's worth it. It's good. You're going to gain speed. You might not gain alien speed, but just having someone to point out things that you yourself don't see is always going to help you, right? You're in the car And even if you go behind it and look at from the outside, you may be trying the corner one way, and there may be 3 or 4 different ways to enter that corner. The weight balance in the car could be different than something you're used to driving. You might be changing disciples, going from a front engine to a rear engine. You can now turn the car in another 2 or 3 feet later than you normally would, and the car is going to do that. Those kind of things, outside influence, is what's going to give it to you. There's a couple other things you guys touched on here that I just want to get out of the way from chat here as well. Joa and Pilikun both mentioned, and you guys kind of half touched on it by talking about the coaching in real sports, right? Like you guys were kind of mentioning like football and this kind of stuff. Joa and Pilikun both mentioned it's no different than paying for COD, and Pilikun, of course, like who does that, you know? but it kind of has to be realized at this point, and I think it's important with the sim racing discussion in particular that these things that we're doing, these quote unquote esports, are becoming sports, right? As much as we've kind of joked and memed about it for the last 5 years, it is becoming a thing now. There are like multi-million-dollar tournaments in what is it, Dota, I think it is, and League of Legends, and they're MOBAs. They're top-down strategy games. They're not something that's crazy. There are coaches that are for that are paying top dollar. You have teams living in team houses working with a coach who might not be as good as these kids because he doesn't have the actions per minute or whatever. In our case, the reaction time, because we're sim racers, right? But the person has the fundamentals down, and passing on those fundamentals is going to be beneficial. And then now I mentioned along with that I've never paid for coaching in particular, but like I definitely understand the merit. Along with what you guys were saying, it's like it is going to be worth it.
That doesn't mean you haven't had coaching, by the way. It just means you didn't pay for it.
Well, yeah, and that's exactly right. Like you and I have gone out on track and just been screwing around, and you've pulled in behind me and been like, "Hey, like you're entering a little wide there," or it seems like you're getting on the gas. Oh, you're loose.
Well, and anybody who's ever been a skateboarder knows that's how it is. You're down at the park and you're like, "Dude, how'd you do that?" The guy's like, "Oh, I just kind of,
That's exactly right, and that's what I was actually going to go into when you were talking about the paying for coaching side of things. I have taught guitar and skateboarding in particular and been paid for that. I've never paid for coaching, but I taught guitar for like damn near a decade, and like just over different points I was doing competitions when I was younger for skateboarding, so I taught younger kids how to do drop-ins and big airs and stuff like that, and their parents would pay me $20 an hour or something like that to go do that. And like with my guitar I was charging $50 an hour, right? So like the cost on these things ranges greatly. And then in terms of sim racing in particular, to kind of close this off, what I've done personally is I have things on my channels, right? Just like Sean, you guys, how the patrons work and the subscriptions and all of that kind of stuff. Those people that are subscribed to our social media channels, and like all you bros, when you're in those channels, you gain like points for things. So what I've opted to is those free points you can use to get me to review a lap and do a help out that way, which in some ways you're paying for the coaching because you're there, you're subscribed, it promotes donations, but it's not a mandatory thing. And I think that's my personal way of dealing with it, rather than charging to do it more of a donation and a service to the community, if you can kind of deal.
Right. I think Levere mentioned something I'm going to touch upon. My personal belief is that coaching is awesome, but you do it in stages. When you're first starting out, obviously, that's a great time to get some basic instructions so you don't learn some bad habits. But then after you've learned those basics, I think you need experience to build upon that training, that knowledge, that wisdom, that coaching. And then you might hit another plateau, at which point you need another coach to help you make that next leap that you're then going to have to go back to the books on your own again and put those practices to use. And I think that when you get to that super professional level, that they actually don't necessarily always stick to one coach. They actually, and this would be, I'll tell you what I would do, but they bounce around to get different skill sets, different thought processes from varieties of coaches. If I had a kid, which everyone should thank God I don't,
Nah.
I'd be a racing dad, right? I didn't get to do it, so my kid will. I would get them going, and I'd give them that basic, right? I'm a wheelman. I can teach them how to brake. I can teach them how to accelerate, blah, blah. And then I'll let them get to a plateau. And then I'd purposely get them a particular coach that I know is really good at, I'll use racing as an example, but if you were going to groom a child to be the next Ayrton Senna. And this goes against, you can't coach Ayrton Senna. Getting back to what you cannot, I could pay a gazillion dollars in coaching and I'm not going to beat Beneke. You can give me a gazillion dollars in coaching, I'm not going to beat Elvis Rankin, right? It ain't that. You can't coach certain things. But if I were trying to groom the next Ayrton Senna, it would be coaching. And now I want a coach that really specializes perhaps in defensive driving. You know, maybe it's an ex-racer who had one of the greatest finishing percentages in history of racing. So that's who I want coaching my kid for a little while. But at another point, maybe I do need to go to one of those guys who is just, known for aggressive driving even. But I think that when I think of professional athlete coaching, they have a coach that, using a quarterback, he'll have a coach that's his training coach that never sees him on the field, right? It's about everything else that isn't on the field. He might have another coach that's about just physical yoga, stretching, but it might be... and then there's the on the field. Well, he might have a coach that's about footwork that never teaches him about throwing the ball. And so when it comes to coaching, I don't think there's really a limit depending on what you're trying to achieve. And then my final thought, because we are getting close to the 11, I'll give my final thought and I'll turn it to you guys for your final thoughts on it. When it comes to coaching and even the cost, is it worth it? Is it too much? Well, the answer is no. No one's holding a gun to anybody's head. If you want to hire a coach, man, hire a coach. If you're sick of being a back marker in your league and you have the means and you want to put in the time and learn the skills, hire a coach. And then the question of how much, well, I don't know. What is it really worth to you? From my perspective on coaching, I had to value the worth of my time. I'm sure if you had enough money, you could get Max Verstappen to coach you in sim racing. Right? I mean, if you had enough money, even Max Verstappen will take $1 million to coach you to sim race if that's what it took. So, I mean, is there too much? Well, I don't know. What's your priority there? What are your needs? I'd be thrilled to get Mitchie Hoyer for $40 over Max Verstappen for $1 million. But I'm just saying, again, I don't think anyone's taking food off their table for sim coaching. I don't think anybody's kids are missing out on a meal because daddy had to have some sim coaching. I'm just going to play a hunch that goes into the extracurricular funds and no one's that whacked on priorities. Anyway, but so, yeah. And then the other thing I'm going to say is you don't need a coach. And Devin said it, yes, a coach might see things that you don't see. You can't find your own mistakes in math. If you made a mistake on a spreadsheet, you can look all day and you're not going to see that character you screwed up on. Someone comes in, they see it in 2 seconds, right? But that doesn't mean that you can't check your own mistakes. That doesn't mean you can't hold yourself to a higher standard of driving. If you watch my streams when I race, it's almost Tourette's. I almost make tics and noises when I make small mistakes. I make big mistakes, I scream and I yell and I cuss. But small mistakes, I grunt and I snort. And no, you kill the one who's not as... Don't you? I know you remember, Billy. You kill the slower kid. You can't afford to. Yeah, I mean... No, and then maybe you gotta do a crowdfundme. Oh, it's so sick, Sean. Okay, all right, so, anyway, your guys' final thoughts on coaching? Are you gonna do it again, Amir, if you had an opportunity?
For me, probably, I mean, I would, I think, one of the biggest reasons why I haven't gone back to it again is, I mean, since then, we started up our endurance team. I mean, and we've got a couple of fast guys in our endurance team, so, I mean, instead of going out again and getting coaching, I've been watching what those guys like. We've got David Grinnell. The guy's lightning fast. Stand on, it's pretty quick. We've had a bunch of others in our team that are really fast drivers. So when I know, hey, I'm a half a second slower than them, I go and watch them. What are they doing in the corners? Where are they braking? Where are they accelerating? How are they accelerating? What type of steering radius, are they using to get through a corner? And I look at them and I try to, mimic what they're doing so I can figure out what is, to get a better lap time, be more consistent. And you hit the nail on the head. I mean, coaching is. I've heard people say really bad things about sim racing coaching. I've heard some people say really good things. In the end, it's really up to you as a person. Like, what do you want out of a sim title? What are you expecting? Do you want to get better? Are you happy where you're at? Are you just happy having fun? I mean, if you want to be faster and you can't do it on your own, yeah, I mean, go out and get a coach. Or another thing is like what I did. Well, I wanted to be faster. I went and raced in leagues where there was a bunch of people that were faster than me, and watching them and modifying my techniques and skills and to what they were doing. And then ultimately, the price is up to you. I mean, what is your time worth for to get sim coaching lessons? I mean, you mentioned, it was $40. You can go to Driver 61. It's $100. You can go to Pure Driving School, VRS. All of them charge different prices, and ultimately that's up to you. How much do you want to spend on that? And yeah, I mean, we even do it in the sim pit too. We have a couple of our drivers that want to be race with us, and we spend time with them too. And we help them we help them get faster too. And I keep on, I forgot his name, but he's in our endurance team too. He was really slow.
Ken.
Ken Eastep. I'm sorry. No, because I called out his. Exactly. I wanted to call his name out because when Ken first joined us, he was new to sim racing. He wasn't. He didn't have that much experience. So he spent a couple weeks with us. We did not Spa, it was Sebring, and he made a lot of mistakes, and afterwards, instead of criticizing and hating on him and kicking him off the team, it was like, no, dude, we're going to sit down, we're going to take our time, we're going to help you out and become a better driver. So between, I think, you, me, Devin, Chris, we spent time with Ken, showing him, what he needs to do, what he needs to look out for. Because it wasn't just his speed; it was more of his spatial awareness of what was going on track. Something that you have to learn with experiencing, not something that you're born with. And I mean, Ken made enormous strides as a driver. I mean, he started off, I think, being about 5-6 seconds slower than on average, and then now he's within a second or two of us when we're doing our endurance races, and that's just the time that we took off to help him because he wanted to get better too. So he spent the time trying to get better. But I mean, to close it out in the end, like I think some coaching is a great thing. It just depends as a person if you want that or not. And then
any thoughts, Devin?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm pretty easy for the close up. Like, too much as far as cost wise goes, I'm with you guys. It's really up to the individual. It's really just going to come down to how much you're willing to pay. If your pockets, you got money burning a hole in your pocket, and you want to go out and drop a few $100s even on coaches and stuff like that. You want to go to the Driver 61 course. It's like $100. It's a month long. You want to go do that, go do it. If it's something that you can do and you can afford, by all means. If you're trying to pinch your pennies, right? Like you guys see, I got my bubble TV and my 3 different monitors. Y'all know how I run things. Somebody like me is not going to pay for a coach, right? We're gonna bumble through it. We're gonna find our mistakes, and then over time, we're gonna do one of two things. We're going to gain coaching from, like Sean said, from just driving around with bros. Amir, you've helped me out quite a bit, or you're going to be doing self-coaching. And I think that's something that none of us, we never really said the words yet, but we've all kind of touched on it about how you watch drone laps. Yep. You were talking about watching David drive, right? You're self-coaching. That is coaching.
Sure.
So yes, it is worth it, right? Sure. That's totally a part of it. And then just to close off the last part, because, and I wanted to say this in particular because we brought Ken up, but like Ken deserves a big shout out as we're talking about him, because we had somebody that was brand new, and we've had other people as well in the community that are newer. But to be honest, Ken's made the most improvements, I think, consistently out of everybody. And Chris would be another kind of person to mention as well.
Yeah.
Chris came from real racing. He had some, I don't want to call them bad habits, because they're habits that he made in the real world. But coming into sim racing, some of the awareness things and some of the way he looked at things was a little bit different, and he learned and got quite a bit better. Now he's running on an endurance team with an actual team. He's enjoying it. And then Ken, who came in with no experience as far as sim racing goes, and within, I think, less than a year was running endurance races already.
Yeah.
I mean, that's outstanding, and he's running as good as I am, right? Like he might have a spin out or two in a stint. Sometimes other stints he'll run fine, right? And those kind of things will come out with more of the self-coaching and more of the time and patience. But like, he's a perfect example of somebody who absolutely showed great promise, great merit, and a good amount of learning from just some self-coaching as well as help from other people. But it didn't cost him a dime.
Right.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I mean, you brought up. I mean, if you don't want to pay for coaching and you want to get better, find a group that's willing to help you out, or at least find a group of people.
Whatever. Yeah.
You find a league or something where you can learn from people. Join the sim pit. I mean, there's plenty of leagues out there in iRacing and all these other stuff. So yeah, if you want to pinch your pennies and not pay for it, join a league and look at the faster guys and see what they're doing, and adjust your style to them. Not your style, but adjust their techniques to them, to you.
Sure. One thing I think I'll say, and this will be my final thought on it, is if you're watching this and you're on the fence on one area, I think that coaching really does work significantly in the beginner level. Has nothing to do with driving, has nothing to do with racing.
No.
And it is your wheel set up right? Is your sim running properly? Are you running 30 frames per second? Are you,
shut your damn mouth on it. We're talking about the FPS. We're doing it. All right, next month, I'm calling it now. Next month's 3 wide. We're taking an hour to talk about FPS and the various things involved in it.
No, I'm cutting off before I'm sorry to cut you off, Sean, but I mean, no, you bring up like the pre-work that goes into coaching too. I mean, if you ever go to like a racing school, what do they work on first before you actually even ever get into a car? They give you the class. You have the classroom work before you actually even get into a car.
I won't tell the full story, but just truth be told, I crashed 6 RC planes, and then one day hired a coach, a trainer, same thing. And the first thing he did was look at my plane. And obviously, you crash a plane, you build a new plane. There's Ken.
Where? Oh, he's in chat. I can't see chat. I'm sorry.
So yeah, you crash a plane, you build a new plane. My 6th plane, I decided to get a trainer, and the first thing he did was look at my plane. And he's like, oh, okay, well, you have too much throw on this control surface. Well, I was just following the instructions that came with the manual of building the plane, which was true of the 5 previous planes. But he didn't teach me how to fly, but now I think back to those 5 crashed planes, and would they have been crashed had my control surfaces been doing the range of motion that they need to for the level of flying I was doing? So again, just like our controls, frame rate, whatever you want to talk about, first step of coaching really should be, is your machine working properly? Same thing with the driving school. They're not going to send you out on flat tires. It's not going to teach you anything about driving.
That goes back to what you said about the Madden thing too. You have coaching for different things, right? Like when you're talking about the community support, you have the Simpit community. If you need help with hardware stuff, I'll help you guys out all day. Personal message me anytime you need to. If you need help with software stuff, Dave, Payne, Finney McFinger, TFR, they're all software guys. They could help you out all day. If you need help with sim racing stuff, Sean's the man to talk to. David Grunwald, right? Like the people that are good and have good coaching skills. For everything that we do, there's going to be a person that can help you out in the community, free of charge. And if you decide to donate, you're supporting the community, and it just keeps us stronger, right? And then the cost becomes, at that point, inconsequential.
I gotta tell you another recommendation I'm gonna make for those who can't afford but want to get better. Ask questions. People are really nice if you ask questions, funny enough. Not stupid questions like on the grid, you don't ask about setup on the grid. But if you go on a practice night room and ask about setup, people are pretty forthcoming. Yeah. If you ask people about wheel rotation or questions you might have. But when you start asking questions, you start making friends. You get people who give you tips and advice. And that's how something community-based works really well without having to pay the money for it. So, and we've all been helped by that throughout our careers in sim racing and in every hobby we've ever been a part of. All right. That's it for me, you guys.
Well, I think then we wrap it up with our announcements, right?
What announcements?
Well, just the stuff that we got going on, because we got.
I know one announcement. I have an announcement of an announcement.
Ooh.
Uh-oh.
Devin, aren't you Monday announcing? Aren't you announcing the leagues that you're running?
Yes. That is one of the things that I did want to mention. We have the Simpit Rally League, the Mustang Tuesdays, and then we're also going to be doing a Sunday night Indy as well. And I think that's going to be on a 2-week schedule. I haven't fully fleshed out the timing for that one, but all of the track lists will be announced, and the timing for both of the ones apart from the Indy will be announced on Monday.
All right, and then what? We've got our GT Series, GT3 League, tomorrow at 10 a.m. Practice, 11 a.m. race. That's Pacific Standard Time. Tonight at 4. I don't know why I picked 4. I hate 4 o'clock. Peak
It's in your nap time, doesn't it?
It expedites my nap, makes my nap really short, and then it also is the peak heat of the day. 4 o'clock in Thousand Oaks seems to be like the hottest point of the day. Rapidly cools after, but anyway, 4 o'clock today, we're going to have our patron appreciation practice race. The patron appreciation trophy race is going to be next Saturday at 10 a.m. This exact time slot for that race. Anyway, we're going to do a practice race. It's going to be Rallycross Heat Racing tonight, and everybody is welcome. I'm not giving the password out for tonight until we go live, because I want to make sure all the actual patron guys get in first, just to make sure and get the priority spots, and then we'll give out the password during the stream, and we'll do an hour of practice, and yeah, we're going to do some Rallycross racing tonight in preparation for next week's race. Daytona Rallycross Long. I picked the combination because everyone can drive the VW for free, right? And everyone can drive Daytona Long for free. Now, if you own the Subi, you can run it. You own the Focus, you can run it. But, and if you don't, you can, for free, run the VW and the Daytona. I really hope we get enough crowd to even need heat racings next week, but we only average like 12 to 15 for our patron races, so we probably end up just having some fun afterwards or something. I don't know, but we'll run a race.
At least I'll be fully back, hopefully by the 22nd, so I should be there.
Awesome.
And so to pair along with the announcements, you guys got, like you said, the Sunday night we got the GT. Tonight we've got the patron practice race. Next week being the actual patron race. On top of that, we have more NH4. That's the NHS5 NASCAR Heat 5. The rest of those videos, if you guys have been following them at the track stuff, I know they're not super popular, but for those of you guys that are interested in that NASCAR Heat stuff, we're doing the rest of the track videos. Will be coming out over the next week. We're now up to the hard difficulty. Like I maxed it for the last part of the videos. I was gradually increasing it. I know I saw some comments there that it said it looked like it was too easy. When we did the recording, it started out on auto. I moved it up to auto hard, and now it's on max, so you guys will get that. We also have the F1 2020 coverage. We will be starting that. My personal part of that stuff, I'll be kind of recording throughout the week. We'll see some coverage coming out over the next couple weeks kind of deal, depending on how things goes. I don't want to step on Sean's toes, so Sean can let you know what he's doing.
I don't know I'm done making promises.
Somewhere around Friday or so, there's going to be a stream.
This week?
Maybe.
This week?
If he's feeling up for it, we'll see.
This week, everything that Devin just said at some point.
Dorica, thank you for subscribing. Much appreciated on YouTube over there. Thank you, Streamlabs, for letting us know, Dorica. Welcome. Awesome. This is the Sim Pit.
This is the Sim Pit.
But I thank you anyways.
This is the Sim Pit.
So,
welcome to
I'm the machine. Sean Cole.
Awesome. All right, you guys, great topics, great discussion. It's always fun to kind of get more in detail on things that end up coming up on the show that we just spent a couple minutes on. And I know Project Cars 3 in particular is one of those ones that sort of made fanboys and ruffled feathers at the same time from what I've seen out there. but I guess all three of us remain somewhat optimistic for the title. Anyway, Amir, Devin, thank you for being here. Thank you for hanging out. Hopefully I'll see you both at 4 for our practice race. Having fun in Rallycross World.
Sure.
Yeah, bye. Devin, Amir, Hollywood Squares, signing off. This is the Sim Pit. This is 3 Wide. And we will see you on the track.
Thanks, guys.